they sent out a search party to go see who needed help. When they arrived on scene, they discovered something that would become one of the most famous maritime mysteries of all time.
For decades, the story of the SS Ourang Medan has tormented sailors and mystery enthusiasts alike. A phantom ship was discovered floating in the water, its whole crew dead, their faces frozen in dread, with no apparent explanation. Some blamed poisonous gas, while others believed the work was supernatural. But now, in 2025, new evidence has emerged. After years of speculation and dead ends, specialists claim to have discovered the truth behind one of the sea's most terrifying stories. What exactly happened aboard the Ourang Medan? Join us in this video as we reveal the details that will leave you in shock more than the legend itself. The truth surfaces: a deadly cargo and a global cover-up. In 2025, the world finally received an answer, and it was far from comforting. After nearly a century of quiet, curiosity, and hearsay, the mystery of the SS Ourang Medan was finally solved. The International Commission assigned to the case released its long-awaited report, and its findings sent shockwaves through both history and international relations. The ship, it turns out, wasn't just a ghost story. It was a vessel of secrets. According to forensic scientists, maritime historians, and ocean archaeologists, the wreck was carrying a highly dangerous cargo: chemical weapons. These weren't just any munitions, they were leftovers from the chaotic aftermath of World War II. These weapons, nerve agents, nitroglycerin, and other deadly compounds were confiscated from scattered enemy stockpiles across Asia. But instead of being properly destroyed or locked away, they were being shipped illegally and secretly, through unofficial routes. Destinations unknown. Even more disturbing, the crew had no idea what they were carrying. No hazardous suits. There are no safeguards. A steady leak from one of the containers caused a toxic fog to spread silently throughout the ship, assassinating everyone. One by one, the seamen began to collapse. The gas traveled fast through the confined areas beneath the deck. And then came the final blow: decomposing nitroglycerin, unstable and on edge, finally exploded. Fire ripped through the ship, consuming everything. The men, the evidence, the secrets. By the time the flames died, the ocean claimed what was left. So why didn't anyone say anything for nearly 80 years? The report provided a grim answer. The Ourang Medan was part of a secret Allied operation, a mission hidden from public view that aimed to cover up the unlawful transfer of chemical weapons. Those responsible buried the truth deep beneath the sea, believing it would never be discovered. And the cover-up, a calculated erasure, shows just how far nations will go to protect their own secrets, even at the expense of lives. This realization is not only alarming, but also humbling. It challenges us to confront painful truths about the post-war world, including how secrecy and politics frequently trump transparency and fairness. The Ourang Medan was real. Its cargo was illicit. The deaths aboard were entirely preventable. The silence that followed stands as a chilling reminder of how far governments will go to hide their actions from public scrutiny. As unsettling as it is, the revelations force us to face harsh truths about the post-war era, about secrecy, accountability, and the perilous intersection of weapons and politics. One thing is now certain: the Ourang Medan no longer floats as a mere myth. It stands as a stark warning from history. Some secrets, submerged beneath the waves, refuse to remain hidden. What secrets survived the blast, buried deep beneath the waves? Keep watching to find out. Buried beneath the silence, the hunt that changed everything. For nearly a century, the fate of the SS Ourang Medan was one of the ocean's greatest mysteries. The ship's story, cloaked in murmurs of ghostly crewmen and strange deaths, was frequently dismissed as little more than a sailor's tale. Despite numerous searches and thorough dives into historical documents, no one had discovered the wreck. It seemed as if the sea had swallowed the ship whole and buried it beneath layers of silt, coral, and time. But by 2025, everything had changed. Thanks to cutting-edge undersea technology, the impossible became feasible. A new generation of deep-sea equipment, magnetometers, high-resolution sonar, and 3D imaging has allowed scientists to see through the dense ocean floor like never before. A multinational team of experts joined together, determined to find the truth. Marine archaeologists, oceanographers, naval engineers, and historians worked together to discover the SS Ourang Medan. Their quest led them to the dangerous waters south of the Malacca Strait, a region known for pirate activity and military secrets. A fleet of advanced underwater vehicles swept the seabed in precise patterns. These gadgets weren't just scanning, they were listening for the slightest hint of metal, anything that could signal a ship lost in time. At first, scientists discovered pieces of dispersed signals that hinted at something more. However, as the search narrowed, a curious shape emerged. A massive, uneven lump of metal buried over 70 meters beneath the seafloor. It wasn't merely an anomaly, it marked the beginning of an answer. Its shape was unclear at first, softened by time and buried deep, but the contour was undeniably manufactured. For several months, the team gradually began to remove millennia of compacted silt and coral. With each cautious pass, more of the wreck revealed itself. Twisted steel beams twisted in odd directions. The strong hull plates appeared shattered, as if ripped apart by something powerful and terrible. And the ship's skeleton, what remained of it, had disintegrated into frail, lace-like ruins, foreshadowing a swift, disastrous end. Then came the discovery that sent a jolt through the entire team. Among the ruins, a big, corroded boilerplate appeared. Though crusted with marine vegetation, faded lettering emerged beneath the filth, bearing the stamp of a Dutch foundry, active in the early 1940s. It was a subtle yet effective hint. Could this be the infamous SS Ourang Medan? The infamous ghost ship, which has haunted maritime mythology for decades? There was no official confirmation yet. However, the physical facts, such as the age of the metal, structure, and position, were too precise to ignore. Experts on the scene couldn't dispute the terrifying likelihood that this was it. Sediment and metal samples were promptly delivered to expert laboratories for analysis. Scientists began the tedious process of chemical and forensic analysis, expecting the results to decisively answer the question. As the globe waited, the ocean appeared to hold its breath. What horrors were hidden in the heart of the drifting vessel? Let's find out. Toxic truth. What was found inside the ship? Back on land, the investigation entered its most perilous stage. Forensic oceanographers and chemical weapons experts began the delicate work of salvaging whatever remained inside the SS Ourang Medan wreckage. Using robotic arms and specialized containment chambers, they carefully entered sealed compartments deep within the ship's deteriorated hull. What they discovered was alarming. Pressure-resistant cylinders were buried behind layers of corrosion and sediment, mostly intact after so many years underwater. Scientists investigated the contents, and the results left no question. These were not spare parts or used machinery. They were weapons. Chemical analysis revealed the presence of highly toxic substances, most alarmingly, tabun, a powerful nerve agent first created during World War II and now banned under international law. Traces of potassium cyanide and degraded nitroglycerin were also detected. Salt water had leaked into the casings over time, causing the chemicals to degrade and initiating a dangerous chain reaction inside the ship's confined hold. Experts offered a bleak picture: a hidden cache of hazardous chemical weapons improperly housed and forgotten. Inside the tiny ship, these dangerous substances had combined, forming a lethal neurotoxic cloud. This, they concluded, was the real cause of death aboard the Ourang Medan. Not fire, not drowning, but poison. It explained everything. The old radio transmissions described officers dead with no visible injuries. The reports of twisted expressions frozen on their faces. The terrifying silence aboard a ship full of corpses. There were no ghost stories. The crew hadn't simply died in their sleep. They were awake, gasping, and aware as an invisible assassin filled their lungs. Eyewitness accounts that were once brushed off as fantasy suddenly made perfect, horrifying sense. The final forensic report was grim and conclusive. The crew of the SS Ourang Medan died in one of the slowest, most agonizing ways imaginable, trapped in a toxic nightmare they never saw coming. Terrifying, but tragically true. What dark legacy drifted beyond the wreck, myth, or memory? Stay tuned to find out more. A Strait of Shadows, where legends are born. The Strait of Malacca, a narrow channel connecting Malaysia to the island of Sumatra, has long been one of the world's most important shipping routes. Every day, around 260 vessels sail through its waterways, connecting major economies such as China, India, and Japan. It is a lifeline for global trade, transporting almost 1/4 of the world's goods across oceans. However, underneath its business prominence lies a darker reputation. For decades, the strait served as a hunting field for pirates. It is still famed among sailors today, not only for criminality but also for risk. The waterway narrows to only 1.5 miles wide at the Phillips Channel, creating traffic jams at sea. Some of the world's largest ships can't even pass through, and maybe that's a good thing, because the Strait of Malacca holds secrets, and it keeps them well. Over the past 100 years, the strait has swallowed more than 30 ships, vanishing roughly one vessel every 3 to 4 years. But none have haunted seafarers like the SS Ourang Medan. It was June 1947 when the strangeness began. Ships passing through the strait picked up a distress signal, broadcast in Morse code. The message came in 2 eerie parts. The first said, "All officers, including the captain, are dead, lying in the chart room and bridge. Possibly, the whole crew is dead." Then, just minutes later, a horrifying final message. "I die." There was no name, no coordinates, and no explanation. Just silence. Panic spread rapidly. Authorities and surrounding vessels launched a desperate search. The letter did not specify where the ship was, but everyone recognized the urgency. A catastrophe had occurred somewhere in those turbulent waters, and the clock was ticking. The strait, which was constantly busy, suddenly became the setting for a sinister maritime mystery. Even while numerous ships kept watch, what they discovered would create more questions than answers. Initially, the search returned nothing. The expanse of the sea devoured all clues, but with the help of British and Dutch listening posts, the source of the distress signal was ultimately identified. Far out in the Indian Ocean, beyond the major trade lanes, lonely and adrift. The Silver Star, an American commercial ship, came the closest to the location. After getting the coordinates, the captain wasted no time. He understood what the SOS meant and the urgency it conveyed. The Silver Star promptly reversed direction, racing through the waters to intercept what became known as the century's most intriguing ghost ship. Within hours, the Silver Star's crew noticed a form on the horizon, a dark silhouette moving aimlessly across the ocean surge. It was the SS Ourang Medan. From a distance, the ship appeared abandoned. There are no traces of power, no apparent crew, and no reaction to radio or horn cries. She just drifted, strangely silent, at the mercy of the currents. As the rescue ship approached, an unsettling quiet fell over the scene. The two vessels were securely tied together, and a boarding party was swiftly assembled. But nothing could prepare them for what was about to happen. The instant the Silver Star crew stepped onto the deck of the Ourang Medan, a nightmare began. Bodies were everywhere. The Dutch crew lay strewn across the deck, their eyes wide awake, lips frozen in wordless cries, and faces twisted with dread. Their limbs were locked in strange configurations, as if they were attempting to fight off something unseen, something horrible. Even the ship's dog, discovered in the bow, was rigid and snarling, its teeth bared in death. The horror continued below deck. The captain's corpse was found slumped on the bridge. The officers lay motionless in the chart room and wheelhouse. The engineers were discovered at their stations, as if they were still working, but had been struck down in the middle of their tasks. And the radio operator, who had sent out the final message, was discovered dead by his equipment, his hand still resting on the key, his face frozen in the same expression of horror. The Ourang Medan was more than a ghost ship. It was a floating tomb, filled with death and mystery, and no clear cause. The man who had sent the chilling SOS, the final, desperate "I die," was discovered slumped over his radio equipment. His hand still rested on the Morse key, as if frozen mid-signal. His expression, like the rest of the crew's, was twisted in terror. His limbs, like theirs, were stiff and contorted, as though each of them had struggled against some invisible force in their final moments. It was painfully clear. Everyone aboard had died in agony. Yet strangely, none of them bore any visible injuries. The ship itself was intact, with no sign of struggle or damage. Medically speaking, their bodies were normal. No wounds, no signs of trauma. It was as though death had come silently, suddenly, and completely unexplainably. Then things became even stranger. The corpses were decomposing at an accelerated rate, their skin bloating and darkening as though they had been dead for weeks, not hours. The Silver Star crew had never seen anything like it. But perhaps the most disturbing anomaly was the temperature. Despite being a blazing summer day, with surrounding temperatures soaring above 37 degrees Celsius, 100 degrees Fahrenheit, parts of the Ourang Medan's interior were freezing. Instruments showed readings as low as 4 degrees Celsius, 40 degrees Fahrenheit, in multiple compartments. It was as if the ship carried a pocket of unnatural cold, untouched by the tropical heat outside. Still, the Silver Star's captain, against his crew's growing unease, ordered the vessel towed back to port. They tethered the ship from bow to stern, prepared for the long journey home. But the sea had different plans. Just minutes after the ships were connected, smoke began to pour from the Ourang Medan, first in wisps, then in thick clouds. The smoke looked to be emanating from cargo hold number 4, located deep within the hull. Alarms were sounded. Chaos erupted. The Silver Star crew worked desperately to break the tow lines, their instincts screaming danger. And then it occurred. A tremendous explosion ripped through the Ourang Medan, pulling the ship's hull completely out of the water. The blast was so intense that it splintered the decks, cracked the masts, and ripped through the steel like paper. Within moments, the ship broke in two, with fire devouring the wreckage as they sank beneath the seas. The Ourang Medan was gone. In a matter of seconds, the tide swept up the only trace of her existence and the misery she bore. Were secrets sunk with the ship, or buried by design? Let's find out. Truth or cover-up? The chemical cargo theory behind the Ourang Medan disaster. Miraculously, no one aboard the Silver Star was harmed in the explosion, and thankfully, none of the crew had remained on the doomed vessel when it detonated, not that any had been willing to. The horror they had witnessed was more than enough to convince every last sailor to stay far away from the Ourang Medan. It was sheer luck, and perhaps a stroke of intuition, that the explosion didn't occur while the ships were tethered side by side. Had that been the case, the blast would have taken down the Silver Star and its crew as well. Their caution saved them, and it's only thanks to their vigilance and quick thinking that we have any account of what happened that day. The story first surfaced in an official report by the United States Coast Guard in May 1952. Since then, the tragedy of the SS Ourang Medan has inspired a storm of questions and a flood of speculation. What exactly happened on that ship? Why did every crew member die in such unexplained terror? And more disturbingly, what were they transporting? As with many maritime mysteries, theories soon emerged. Some drew parallels to the infamous Philadelphia experiment, suggesting the Ourang Medan had been involved in a top-secret government trial gone catastrophically wrong. Others leaned into the paranormal, proposing that supernatural forces had overtaken the vessel, pointing to the unnatural cold, rapid decomposition, and agonized expressions as evidence of something beyond science. But not everyone agreed the story was even real. Skeptics pointed to one troubling fact. The name Ourang Medan did not appear in any official maritime registry. There were no port records, no cargo manifests, no formal documentation that the ship had ever existed. For many, this raised the possibility that the entire incident was a hoax. However, there may be a more plausible explanation. In 1954, a German author named Otto Mielke published a detailed account of the case in the German publication Das Neue Zeitalter. His research, which included conversations with Silver Star crew members, was said to be authenticated by those present. During the incident, Mielke's work contained previously unreleased information, including the ship's final coordinates, her planned route, and notes on her mysterious cargo. If true, Mielke's findings supported the idea that the Ourang Medan was not a myth, but a ship deliberately erased from history, scrubbed from the records for reasons known only to those with the power to do so. Even more intriguing was Otto Mielke's reference to the ship's cargo. According to his notes, the Ourang Medan had been carrying a volatile mix of highly dangerous unsecured substances, most notably potassium cyanide and nitroglycerin. If true, this revelation painted a damning picture. No legitimate shipping authority would have permitted such materials aboard a civilian vessel, especially one so poorly equipped to handle them. This detail gave rise to one of the most persistent theories. The Ourang Medan was not just a ghost ship. It was a smuggling vessel operating under a false identity. Some believe it had originally sailed under a different name, only to be renamed mid-journey to evade detection. This would explain why the ship was so far off normal trade routes, and why it appeared in no official records. It was flying under the radar, quite literally. In this version of events, the crew's fate was sealed the moment seawater infiltrated the cargo hold. The water may have reacted with potassium cyanide, producing a lethal gas that silently spread throughout the ship. As more seawater reached the unstable nitroglycerin, a fire likely ignited below deck, ultimately triggering the catastrophic explosion that consumed the vessel. It's a tidy explanation. Too tidy, perhaps. For one, cyanide poisoning is typically swift and quiet, not the kind of death that contorts faces into expressions of horror and pain. Yet every recovered body aboard the Ourang Medan told a different story. Arms clawed upward, jaws locked in mid-scream, eyes frozen in terror. It didn't look like they had simply died. It looked like they had fought something invisible and lost. This has led some investigators to propose a darker possibility. What if the ship wasn't carrying potassium cyanide at all? What if the true cargo was tabun, a nerve agent even more insidious? Developed by Nazi scientists in the years leading up to World War II, tabun, or GA, is a devastating chemical weapon. It attacks the central nervous system, causing convulsions, paralysis, and death, often while the victim remains conscious and aware. It was produced in large quantities by Germany and is known to have been shared with Imperial Japan, one of its wartime allies. Following the collapse of the Axis powers, the Western allies, particularly the United States, began scrambling to seize enemy technology, personnel, and weapon stockpiles. In the chaos of post-war recovery, records were destroyed, scientists defected, and shadowy deals were struck behind closed doors. According to this theory, the Ourang Medan may have been a disposable transport, commissioned to move captured chemical stock, possibly surplus Japanese supplies of tabun, to a secure location. But with no paper trail and no official oversight, safety protocols may have been non-existent. A minor leak, a faulty seal, or even a temperature shift could have triggered a toxic chain reaction that wiped out the crew in minutes. To distance themselves from the operation, it's believed the freighter was crewed by foreign nationals, individuals with no direct ties to the Western powers. If the plan was to use the ship once and erase all evidence, the Ourang Medan served its purpose all too well. The question remains, was this just a tragic accident or a cover-up decades in the making? It's also important to note that tabun is a highly volatile nerve agent. It has an extremely low persistence level, meaning it evaporates quickly after release. By the time the crew of the Silver Star boarded the Ourang Medan, any lingering traces would have completely dispersed, leaving no physical evidence behind. And yet, the agent's impact may have been etched into the bodies of the dead. Tabun interferes with neurotransmitters that control muscle movement, specifically blocking the ability of muscles to relax. This could explain the frozen expressions of terror, the twisted limbs, the eerie way each body seemed to be locked in the final throes of agony. It's hard to dismiss all of that as a coincidence. Still, the mystery endures. The tale of the Ourang Medan may be nothing more than a chilling maritime legend, one of many whispered across ports and coastlines. But the official report issued by the U.S. Coast Guard in 1952 complicates that idea. Why mention a ship that never existed? Why confirm a distress call and a ghostly wreck if there was no truth to the story? Some believe it's exactly that detail, the official recognition, that lends credibility to the tale. Others point to the dedicated researchers who have spent decades piecing together fragments of the event, scouring old archives, naval records, and sailor testimonies. People don't usually commit their lives to chasing a hoax, at least not for 50 years. And that leads to the more unsettling possibility. Something happened aboard that ship. Something unofficial, unauthorized, and deliberately buried. Whether it was a rogue chemical transport, a smuggling operation gone wrong, or something even darker, we may never know. Stories like these don't always end with answers. With more than half a century gone, enthusiasm for uncovering the truth has faded. If the Ourang Medan was real, then it now lies somewhere at the bottom of the Indian Ocean, undisturbed and forgotten. And unless some future discovery brings her back into the light, the mystery will remain exactly as it is today, unsolved, unproven, unshakable. We are once again left to wonder, from whispers of poison to headlines worldwide. How did myth take hold? Keep watching to find out. How the legend grew. The evolution of the Ourang Medan story in the press. While the fate of the Ourang Medan remains shrouded in mystery, the story itself didn't just appear out of thin air. One of its earliest known versions came to light in 1940, printed in the local Trieste newspaper Il Piccolo. The article, part of a series titled I Drammi del Mare, or Dramas of the Sea, was written by Silvio Shirley, a journalist who would later become one of the central figures in preserving this eerie tale. Around the same time, British newspapers, including the Daily Mirror and the Yorkshire Evening Post, ran similar reports. These versions credited the Associated Press as their source and noted the story was told by a merchant marine officer reporting from Trieste, Italy. But interestingly, these early accounts placed the ship near the Solomon Islands rather than the Indian Ocean. The details were noticeably different too. There was no mention of the rescue ship, and the distress call was not the now infamous "I die" message that has since become synonymous with the Ourang Medan legend. Then, in 1948, 3 articles appeared in the Dutch-Indonesian newspaper De Locomotief. These were crucial in shaping the modern version of the story. Citing Shirley again, they introduced new elements, including the deathbed confession of a lone surviving sailor, who supposedly told his story to a missionary. That missionary, in turn, relayed it to Shirley. It was a dramatic addition, lending the tale an emotional weight and almost cinematic flair that earlier reports lacked. Yet even De Locomotief ended with a disclaimer, one that spoke volumes. It may seem obvious that the entire story is a fantasy, a thrilling romance of the sea. On the other hand, the author, Silvio Shirley, assures us of the authenticity of the story. That same year, on October 10th, the story was picked up once again, this time by the Albany Times in New York. That version traced its roots back to a different Dutch source, Elsevier's Weekly. And in May 1952, the story surfaced yet again, this time in the Proceedings of the Merchant Marine Council, published by the United States Coast Guard. That publication gave the tale a sense of official weight, even if it still left more questions than answers. Strangely, Shirley himself would later go on to write a report on Trieste's export trade in 1959, his name quietly resurfacing nearly 2 decades after first documenting the Ourang Medan. From front-page frenzy to vanished facts, why does the record remain blank? Stay tuned to find out. Missing from the record books, the paper trail that never existed. As more people investigated the Ourang Medan narrative, unexpected contradictions emerged, beginning with the lack of official records. Lloyd's Shipping Register, the primary source for verified vessels around the world, had no trace of a ship with that name. And it wasn't just Lloyd's. Searches through shipping archives in the Netherlands and other countries also came up empty. The Ourang Medan, it seemed, had never officially existed, at least not on paper. This glaring omission casts even more doubt over the entire story. Author Roy Bainton, one of the few who has thoroughly examined the case, claims that the identity of the Silver Star, the ship said to have responded to the Ourang Medan's distress call, can be confirmed with high confidence. But here's the problem. There's no mention of a rescue attempt in the Silver Star's ship logs. Nothing. There are no entries. There is no detail. There was no evidence that the crew had ever seen a phantom ship in peril. Many others, including Bainton, believe that significant elements of the tale were misreported, misremembered, or purposely created. The location, dates, ships involved, and even the circumstances surrounding the explosion could have shifted over time. Worse, the entire thing could be a complete fabrication, based on rumors, but presented as true. Despite its flaws, the story has not faded. The mystery of the Ourang Medan continues to captivate people, exactly because of what we don't know. What are your thoughts on the solved mystery of the SS Ourang Medan? Let us know in the comments section below. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the next video shown on your screen to catch up on your favorite celebrity stories. See you there.